us, and I welcome, Stacey, who's going to just like set the context, who's prepared some beautiful slides, and we'll just kind of do a deep dive into what that trajectory of changing a larger industry has looked like, and then we'll just go into questions and just have a conversation. So,
great.
Okay. Okay, well, thank you for attending today. My staff prepared some slides, but I'll probably tell more personal story and kind of adapt to how, as an Ashoka Fellow, I decided that I wanted to really kind of take on a whole industry, right? And so the work that we do at Next Step is in response to affordable housing gap in the U.S. But, you know, how did I think about it when I decided to launch Next Step? And something that really resonated with me at the time was that we had a study done when I was working in Eastern Kentucky to look at the market across the U.S., the rural home ownership nonprofits that were putting housing on the ground. How many a year were they doing? And what happens in the U.S., like lots of different funders will fund a piece of a house, and everybody claims that house, and like everybody's, you know, got a little piece in it. But when we had a real study done, what I found was that all the nonprofits across the U.S. in that year got about 2,000 to 4,000 homes done. And I was just shocked. I kind of stood back and said, is that all that we're doing, right? Yeah, like working across the whole U.S., new home ownership units in rural America with size between 2,000 and 4,000. And in that year alone, the manufactured housing industry had built 120,000 homes, mostly going in rural America. And so I kind of just stood there and thought, you know, a lot of these groups, including me, really don't like manufactured housing. Hi, Casey. But if we could make some kind of change in this industry, we could affect a lot more people at scale, right? We could touch a lot more families. So while we're responding nationally to affordable housing gap, in my mind, it was a scaled solution that nobody was looking at. In fact, everybody was avoiding it. Everybody in my field of nonprofit housing practitioners felt like it was kind of like the enemy, quite frankly. And if you're from rural America, particularly in persistent poverty regions or a place like Appalachia, we've seen a lot of, you know, had a lot of bad views of manufactured housing. It had been part of my landscape. And so there were a lot of myths, stigma, and then there was just, you know, really bad situations. So, you know, if you could kind of get your head around the problem, then you begin to kind of think about the solution. So, you know, just a little bit on this history, that manufactured housing evolved out of the travel trailer industry, right? And so it's, I'm going to apologize. We're going to start getting texts from my sister about Christmas plans coming across my screen. I hope you don't see that. But so this.
Don't worry.
Oh, wonderful. Great. I'm seeing them. You're not. Thank you. So, you know, it was the travel trailer industry, and back in the 1950s, this nomenclature came about around mobile homes. And what I would say to you about the word mobile home is that that's myth, that 95% of these homes, once they hit the ground, they never move. They moved around in the early days, but they're really not mobile. And so, you know, there's a lot of popular culture that's reinforced a lot of negative stereotypes, if you can think about reality show. But, you know, coming from Appalachia, you know, this home, I worked on this home, replaced this home. This is just the reality of what we were dealing with. And I would tell you that I grew just really tired of going into these old homes with them falling apart and then finding out that families still owed on these homes. And as I got deep into the problems and understanding them, it was around a finance system that was subprime, okay, that you would take out a loan, double-digit interest rate, and then you would try to buy the best quality that you could afford. And with the incomes in the region and the available product, you know, we've got a lot of old, bad homes on the ground. So there's like 2 million of these oldest mobile homes built before 1976. Some of America's worst housing stock, okay? And when we look across the country, yes, we have these old homes, but you know, it's about 8% of America's housing stock, and it's a valuable part of an affordable housing stock that we need in the country. Okay, so I was really kind of thinking about, you know, how do I move from problems to solution? Okay, and this is what you know, Brandon was asking about. And you know, I thought, well, I think it's simple, right? You know, in my mind, I thought it was simple. You know, if I could if I could work with the factories to specify what's quality, right? Develop and work with them high quality standards, get the home as energy efficient as I can at a point where people can afford it. So we put all our value on the Energy Star brand because that was very affordable, to kind of meet people where they are in their affordability, and then to have a system to prepare and support the home buyers through education, and then to find them a good loan outside of you know, the subprime loans, and then couple that with good housing policy, and we call it a home as a home, right? We basically advocate for the, you know, that families who live in manufactured homes should be treated equally to any other type of housing. So it sounded simple. And what I found was it was, you know, kind of rather hard, right, to begin to get your head around a whole industry. So this is an industry, at the time I got started, it was building about 120,000 to 140,000 homes a year. They'll probably build 100,000 this year. And when I first started thinking about working with this industry, I just showed up and I went to shop for homes at retail lots. And I would talk to them about what I wanted to do as a nonprofit. And I would say that people did not call me back, okay? I started at a very low level. I would walk into places that sell homes. We call those manufactured housing retailers or dealers. And particularly in the South, we'll call them a dealer. And after multiple visits, no phone calls back. Well, I got lucky, I'll say. I was at the right place at the right time. I had really done my homework on this industry. So the very first thing I did was I stuck my head in the books for 6 months and read everything that had ever been written about this industry, and I went from novice to expert, particularly in how it was financed, in about 6 months. And I started doing research about, you know, if I were going to do this business, how would I go about it, and who would I partner with? And I looked at all the companies and who were the leaders, who were the innovators, who's strong. Well, what I found was it's not a great big industry, right, in terms of the number of companies. And so, you know, I could kind of get my head around. So then I got lucky. Right place, right time, talking about my research. And Paul Bradley, who's an Ashoka Fellow, said to me, well, we're getting ready to meet with the Ford Foundation, and we've invited Kevin Clayton, the CEO of Clayton Homes. Would you like to come to that meeting? So, and of course, right? And I had 15 minutes to put out a vision of what I could see next step being today. So that would be the next thing I would say to you, that I had this vision that the nonprofits could take advantage and learn from and utilize all the benefits of factory-built housing, all these advantages, right? And we could benefit from reduced development costs. We needed shorter construction times. You know, all this would be great. And so I envisioned a network of trained nonprofits that would do the work. And we would be the middleman and really learn this industry, and we would help them order homes from the factories. Well, I had 15 minutes to pitch it. Good enough. It worked. And I had a team that would sit down and talk to me. Now, because remember, nobody was talking to me until I got the CEO of the largest company. So I think that was the big lesson learned. How do you get to the top and get buy-in, right? If I had not had that, you know, it would have taken me a lot longer, maybe never, right? So he gave me this team, and we worked on creating standards that would work for the nonprofit industry. Okay, so standards are hugely important. Why would they partner with us? That's a good question. In the early days, I think they thought we would probably be pretty good business, like some flow. And so once we started using the homes in Eastern Kentucky, we were a reliable source of orders, right? They said we did everything we said we would do, and we did it well. We went to a large manufactured housing show, and they had these big jumbo TVs up on the show floor that said good, better, best. On the best row were all our pictures. So I knew then that we were onto something if the largest manufacturer would be showcasing our work to the industry. Okay, so I think it was always about consistency and doing it right. So then we said, well, let's explore from a pilot. So we got proof of concept and pilot in Eastern Kentucky. Let's try to roll this out into a few more states. And they began to do this with us. And we proved that we could train nonprofits on how to do it, right? So the training was the next part of this in scaling something and getting consistency in doing that work. So now I'm talking about over a decade of work here. What I would say too is that when we started this, I never asked them for money. I never asked for a grant. I asked to do business. We shook hands. For many years, we didn't even have a contract. We worked on handshakes, and we got paid, right? And we set it up just as, you know, if we were selling a house, we took our cut, right? So that's the way I approached this company. Today, they're probably one of our largest philanthropic supporters, but we worked over a decade before they were that, which is, you know, I think some nonprofits think, oh, I'm going to go straight to philanthropy, right? But we did not do that. So that was, I think that was probably smart on our part, kind of knowing the company and building this deep, lasting relationship. Yes.
For the research, like did anyone ever pay you for all of the research that you did, or did you turn that into, you know, papers or books, or you just did that for your own benefit to learn?
Well, that's a good question. At the time, I was in a program at Harvard called Achieving Excellence. And I agreed to take on a significant challenge in my organization and my region. And so I was being supported to participate in that program. And I did that research as part of that program. So I had grant support to do that. And then, you know, a lot of that work, you know, I did a lot of writing, and it was not really published as research work, but became kind of very knowledgeable on this. And so, you know, I've done lots of different work over the years in putting information out. Okay. But I would have never been able to move into this industry and be taken seriously unless I knew what I was talking about. Okay. So then the next thing we did was we basically got a business plan together and concept, and you know, started expanding, and we got some support for some startup work, philanthropic, not from the company, but from others. The Ford Foundation kind of jumped in with us early on, invested in us for several years to kind of get us going. And that helped us grow. And then we decided that we couldn't work with just one and the largest manufacturer. We took it to all the large manufacturers. And so we had to handle that relationship very carefully. So today, Next Step works with the 3 largest manufacturers, regional manufacturers, and we can pull on factories across the nation. Okay. I would tell you my experience is that working with nonprofits, not everybody can work at scale, okay? And they tend to be unreliable, and because they're competing for grant funds, right? And so they don't have consistent production programs that you can rely on their orders all the time. And so it's a little bit of stop and go a little bit. So to really get at our mission, we began to think about it more critically a couple of years ago. One, we understand that this is how affordable home ownership gets done in rural America. We understand those stats, okay? But we also know that about 500,000 people are seeking to buy a manufactured home every year, and we know that only 1 in 5 are ready to buy. We know that 1 in 5 are near ready, and 3 in 5 need long-term credit building and education, information, and to basically build their credit up. So what we did was, we thought, well, if we're going to really work in this industry, let's go deep in the industry. And so we created a new program. It's called our Smart MH, or Smart Manufactured Housing Program. And we expanded our network from nonprofits to industry partners. And in 1 year's time, we went from from about 50 members to, we have over 400 members right now. And the growth has come from the industry, not the nonprofits. This really makes us different now. We're really working in this industry. We've embraced it. And what we're doing is, most of this growth is manufactured housing retailers. And why would they join Next Step? It's because we've created an online education program for manufactured home buyers. And we've created a referral system to take these buyers who are near ready or not ready from them and work with these families. So when you join our retail program, they keep the 1 in 5 that are ready to buy, and they give the other 4 to us. And so that is moving. Our largest partner in doing this, we signed another corporate partnership. We've partnered with Freddie Mac. Why would we go to Freddie Mac? Well, in my industry, Freddie Mac and Fannie Mae buy most of the mortgages in the country, right? So if you buy a home, you close your loan at the bank, they buy your loan. It's a secondary market. So we went to the secondary market. We have a relationship with them that we're shaping policy for finance for this whole industry now. That's we have a contract, consulting contract with them. So we're developing new loan products with them. We've created a task force to help shape policy on the ground for Freddie Mac. So we've created this education program with them. So now we have lender partners that'll do manufactured home loans, the people who sell the homes, and the factories. We're in all aspects of this industry now and have more partnerships within the industry than outside of the industry. So I would say that when I first got started, it was a huge elephant to me. I didn't know where to start, right? And took a nibble with, building some homes. But then I began to kind of dissect, if I could go one place that could influence change within the industry and make them build a better home that's more energy efficient, well, I go to the people who finance it, right? And that's where we shape it and make that work. Okay. So mission, I kind of got to it late. Our mission statement says we're out to change this industry. I just want to be clear about that. They know it. It was interesting when we came out with our mission statement. They're like, why do you think you have to change this, right? So some interesting dialogue. And in fact, we trademarked manufactured housing done right. And they kind of came back and said, are you insinuating we do it wrong? So we've had some lively debate with this, but there is a recipe for doing it right. And they do elements of it to get it right, but not all aspects. So one thing that was really important working with them is really know what you're good at and what they're good at. And when we really got to the crux of that, there's one thing that we were better at than them, and they admitted it, and that was preparing and supporting home buyers. They're better at sales. They're better at building it. They're faster, right? Rely on all their strengths. and then work on the issues where they're weak, preparing and supporting, and they were also weak in getting community banks and lenders to make good loans, so there'd be competition against the subprime lenders. Okay. Our manufactured housing done right, I've already hit on this. This is what we try to get them to do. We may not get them to do all aspects of it, but they've got to do parts of this, and then we bring part of it to it. And it's really about getting home buyers at a level that can afford better loans and buy better homes. Okay. I've talked about how we've expanded with industry in our program. The second thing I'd like to talk to you about is how we change this industry. It's about policy and advocacy. I think we all probably do this at some level. For us, we're really investing in this now. We see this is where we're going to get most of our scale change. We're working with many federal agencies. We work with the Federal Housing Finance Agency that regulates Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac. That's how we're getting direct participation in what gets financed. We work with the Department of Energy. We work on the standards of energy efficiency for the homes and the code. We work with the Environmental Protection Agency over the Energy Star program. They're regulated by Housing and Urban Development. We're very involved there. We're also involved with the United States Department of Agriculture and the rural development programs. We got a great win last year. Senator Merkley from Oregon has created finally the first mobile home replacement program. So those old pre-76 mobile homes that I've been working on for more than a decade, what we're going to do about it. We have new funds to work through the rural electric co-ops to replace these homes. So this is something that I've testified in the Senate over. It's the first big piece we've gotten, so we're elated with that. And then we also work with Freddie Mac and Fannie Mae to affect policy change. I think that's our future, is probably training and policy to get the changes that we want. Okay.
Can I ask another question, or should I wait?
Mm-hmm. Go ahead. I'm good.
So when you talk about working with Freddie Mac and FHA, I mean, these are huge, like thousands of employees each, right? So are these like working sessions, or like what does that look like?
Yeah, so that's a great question. So anytime that they're going to change a policy, there's a process through the federal government that requires them to seek public comment, right? And so we go on the record every opportunity we can affecting policy. And then what we're doing is we are getting into coalitions and spreading our tentacles to work with others to get a negotiated position with an agency. So let me give you an example. The Department of Energy, there was an opportunity to get on a rulemaking committee, a consensus committee. So they have to come out in the Federal Register. This comes out. We put our names in that we want to participate. We get on. We build coalitions with the Sierra Club and like a lot of the big environmental groups, the National Defense Resource Council, NRDC, others, and then we'll come up with a position that we can all agree to, and then we'll leverage our memberships to support and advance policy. Okay. So I think that's how we've learned to work. We can't do this by ourselves. Who might care about what we care about? Get an alliance, get, you have to give up something, right? So usually in these, and then get in there and try to make change. We're going to hearings, like for instance, the Federal Housing Finance Agency will hold sessions where we can go in and talk and testify. We do that, all right? And then lately what we've been doing is we're just going in on a quarterly basis, making rounds. We're getting to know people and letting them know how it's going on the ground. Like I just came from the Federal Housing Finance Agency, met with their director, pulled in staff, and they just asked questions like, what's it like out there? What are you seeing, right? And so now it's this one-on-one relationship that we're building in the agency. And I have to say, we have enough resources finally now that we've just contracted with a policy consultant in DC that's also a lobbyist. And he's given us enough hours that we've got boots on the ground in DC now. Okay. All right. Yes, they're huge agencies, but you got to find your way in and keep working on it. Okay. So to transform an industry, I think I'm about done here. It's really about finding these coalitions, partnering with the industry leaders, right? Go to the top, innovate programs that will work within their industries. I think it's also really important to tell stories. Storytelling's huge with our partners and within the industry. They want to feel good about what they're investing in with us and continue to build collaborations. Just some examples of the work. In San Bernardino, California, this is a Freddie Mac demonstration of high quality. We have innovated loan products that's being tested to finance high quality manufactured homes, just like site-built homes. We've got education in the program. We're working with San Bernardino, and they've got 140 lots for us to fill. So we're just getting started. St. Petersburg, Florida, an example of going in and doing infill and again demonstrating how it can be done right. And then I just want to point to an Appalachian family in North Carolina, veteran, and his wife and kids, and we've reduced their utility bills between $300 and $400 to $80 a month, and this is when it all comes home and it works really well. So I am happy to take questions about how to get in an industry that you hate and suddenly love and decide how to try to make change.
Wow, Stacey, thank you. That's such a beautiful, that's such a rich jumping off point. And Casey, you jumped right into the conversation. So I'm sure you have questions. I have 1,000, but if
Hi,
you've got
Stacey.
one, can you
Hey.
just introduce yourself? And Stacey, also technical thing, if you could hit stop share. So that we can now see everyone's gorgeous faces.
Okay.
Stop what? Stop
Yeah.
what?
No, not you, Stacey.
Oh, stop. Oh,
Right.
got it. Okay, got it.
Stacey, Casey, and then Brandon.
I was like, what?
Very rhymey. But Casey, yeah, if you also want to say hi, and if you've got a question or a reflection to offer up, even better.
Well, I'm in an airport, y'all, so sorry for the noise. It's a little, if it gets noisy, I'll put on mute. My head's spinning a little bit. Like I'm thinking through, because we have worked on some level with the gun industry and we still are. So I need to think about it for a minute, but I am going to have questions for you. So I'm Casey Woods, Brandon. I work with Arms with Ethics. We work with gun owners in the gun industry on trying to prevent gun violence, really pragmatic solutions. So I'll let you go, Brandon, because you got a lot of questions while I think about it, okay?
Sorry to put you on the spot.
It's okay.
Sure, everybody knew who was here.
I feel like
Brandon, can you tell me what your work is?
we are trying to diversify the economy in Central Appalachia to be less dependent on coal. Our entry point to that is workforce development. So we started out training people in poverty in coal country and realizing that the whole workforce development system didn't work very well, and that a huge part of the problem was there weren't coal, it butts everything out. And so we needed to create new businesses that could employ these people after they were trained at the same time as we were training them. So as far as I'm not as specific to one industry like the two of you are, but we've ended up, because we're trying to diversify, we touch a lot of we've done a lot of work, and we're the first licensed solar installer. So we've done a lot of work in kind of the energy system through that. We're a licensed contractors. So we do affordable housing development and commercial development, kind of the construction / union system. Agriculture, we've started a sustainable agriculture. So I know like a little bit about a bunch rather than a whole lot about one industry. I'm like opposite of you two in that regard. So when I think about influencing a whole system, it's probably like economic development in rural extraction communities, which would include like business development and workforce development and poverty alleviation. And right now it's a very top down, like what industries can we attract and what governmental programs can we set up? And I envision a much more bottom up, community based entrepreneurial solution to all that. But I feel so like my work has been very place based here in Central Appalachia, but I mean really in Southern West Virginia more specifically. And so I think a lot of people who do economic development and extraction communities are interested in what we're doing, but it just feels kind of overwhelming to think past West Virginia because I didn't set out to change economic development. I really just was born and raised here and love it here, and we happen to be hitting on some things that are interesting. I feel like the 6 months of research, Stacey, that you did were like really critical, and that sounds incredible, and yet I can't imagine that like in my life currently. How did you do that? Like, did you get paid for that, or did you have to sleep on couches for a little while, or?
We used to joke about this. My husband was in college at the time, and I'd come home from work, and we'd put our daughter to bed, and then he would stay up to study, and I would too. And so I did it at night till like from 8 to 1 in the morning, and that's how I did it.
Yeah.
So nobody,
honest answer.
So I couldn't do that today because I couldn't stay awake, but it was like something I got a hold of like a crazy woman and would not let go of it, right? And until I could talk very intelligently, because I knew they wouldn't take me serious. And you all should know, in my industry, I think most of you, it's a very white, male-dominated, conservative industry, right? And so I had to, like guns, and right, I think you can identify from, West Virginia, right? And so this company is from
I've lived in
Knoxville.
Manufactured home for the last 5 years, so I'm one of your people.
Yeah, right. So,
so it's half my family. So
right. And so not only my constituents, but my definitely
colleagues.
This industry, my colleagues, the leadership, they're not women. So I knew if I was going to step out, I had to act smart about it, right? I had to be really smart. And so that was important. It was, there's a good colleague of mine who in the industry that he's African American, and early on he grabbed my arm. He says, "You need to understand something. You and I represent what this industry's not." So it was a quick lesson, right? Of how to approach it. Yeah, is what it is. So that was one of the reasons I had to do that. And then I had to find the weaknesses, right? And I mean, because I was trying to look at it, I was fascinated that with all those federal funds going out in rural America, how could we not be getting more done than we were? But here was an industry that had zero funding that was doing it, right? So that was important for me to kind of understand that. I don't know how that translates for you guys at all, but I think it's, I would just say, policy is important. I think what I've learned, and it's taken me a while to get to make change. For us anyway. And it's taken forever. I testified in the Senate for mobile home replacement in 2010. 8 years later, we got our first move on it. Yeah.
That I appreciate hearing that timetable, because I'm working on some stuff right now that I'm like, I can't believe it's taking this long. And I just think that like entrenched, systems, it just takes time, it just takes time to get people to move. So I'm having a day where
slow.
I'm impatient with that. So I'm glad to hear the message of patience. So yeah.
Persistence. And I was remembered like working with Clayton in the early days, like maybe 2 years into it. And my team said to me, any sane woman would have walked away a long time ago. Why you are still here working with us, I'm not sure. It was that hard, right? And it was because we would get a new partner and they didn't want to have time for us. They didn't want to talk to us, right? It was, or we'd get a house that wasn't exactly the way we had ordered it, right? And caused a problem. It was, it was hard to work out all the kinks, but we stayed with it.
Stacey, I have a question related to Clayton that I feel like, something that you've managed to do that I think a lot of fellows like really have to work through with their partners is like with Clayton, like you said, you're like, we're trying to change an industry and we partner with other companies now. Right. So how did that conversation happen with Clayton to be like, this is not the only partnership in this industry that we're going to have, when they were kind of like the first kid, it's like, we're like new baby, like,
right. Yeah. So it went better at the top than it did down the line. I mean, the people who had worked with us invested in, like on the personal relationships, like, I remember it was like, really, you're going to take this to other, why you do this? But at the CEO level, I mean, he totally understood. You are a charitable organization. You shouldn't lock into one. This is a bigger, we talked industry-wide. This is a bigger play for our industry, right? And so that was an easier conversation at the top. And then it was just getting the others to kind of follow suit. And then once they saw that the CEO was comfortable with that, then we continued to move. Now, Clayton has had its share of bumps. I mean, if you go out and read press, I mean, they had an expose from the Seattle Times that was pretty rough a few years ago. And, and it was mostly through their lending operations, right? Remember, they're my partner, but I'm trying to bring a solution against the lending that they do. And I understand it well enough that I just can't beat up on them and say they're capitalist and that's wrong, right? There is when you go in deep in your understanding, there's no secondary market and it's priced higher because it has to be for the risk they're making. I mean, I get their business model. They're not bad people, but I think a lot of advocates just who don't really deeply understand the financial side of it and everything that's going into it, they get accused of a lot. So we stuck with them through that time. I mean, we kind of, we were kind of quiet and we were careful during that time. I mean, it could have soured for us in a very bad way because we had such a close relationship with them. But I was very glad we had other partners at the time, right? And I think that one thing that I want to point out is I wouldn't recommend anybody to get totally caught up in one producer in one industry because reputationally, that can go south on you. and yeah, worked out okay, but we came close to getting in trouble with that, right? If we had banked on Clayton only, I think we would have looked bad.
Thank
wow.
you.
So diversification is good. Very good. Yeah.
Yep.
And it's that's such a good argument to like remind other fellows of, because I think there's this scarcity mindset in the nonprofit sector that like, this is we can't make, there's this power dynamic where you don't want to make your partner upset or, like all these things. So I appreciate that.
Bird in a hand,
Yeah.
And so you're afraid to lose them. Totally.
Yeah. One thing that helped too was when we got our RS designation, you know, we spun off and created our own nonprofit from our parent, Frontier, where I used to be in Eastern Kentucky. Our attorneys were very careful to give us a strategy that the IRS would not think that we were just a prop company for one manufacturer. And one of those strategies was to have more than one manufacturer, right? So that kind of helped in the conversation, I would say, with Clayton too, right? That we had legal strategy. There was a good reason to be doing this. And they could understand that. They could see the, you know, how you could take us is, you know, sometimes you wonder about nonprofits, like some, not me, but some people might think, oh, they're just kind of a shell nonprofit for them to get to the end, you know, to the end that they want to get to, and they're being used by this company. We wanted to make sure that no one thought that in our arena or at the IRS, right? That we are true to our mission.
And you're also doing business with these folks, right? So like, how hard have you had to fight for your pricing?
Yep. So we created a for-profit subsidiary that does the pricing, and has the contracts with the manufacturers. So if we're doing a larger project, what we'll do is we'll bid it amongst the three, right? Or the big ones, right? And they know they're in a bid. So we can control our pricing in that way. Sometimes it's just, they're not that far apart on pricing, to be honest, Brandon, unless it's a big project. And then it kind of comes to who gives us the best customer service and takes care of us in a particular part of the country matters a lot. We won't sacrifice that over a little bit of money. We remember who's burned us in the past, right? So, good question. So Brandon, one thing I would say to you that I've always imagined putting people to work to get rid of old mobile homes that are decaying on hillsides in Appalachia. There's 150,000 vacant mobile homes. We had a study done. We partnered with Fahy on this. 75,000, half of them are persistently vacant, meaning they're just rotting, right? Nobody's lived in them for a long time. It'd be great if we could figure out how to put people to work and clean up the hills.
I'd love to talk more about that. One of our first social enterprises was actually in deconstruction. Now, we've never done a mobile home because the materials just haven't been as good. I mean, normally we're looking for like turn of the century, you know, old growth wood. But from a triple bottom line, like from that environmental perspective, we're looking to push the envelope. We've actually hired a conservation coordinator to look at this of like, so in a building, there's some low-hanging fruit that lots of people can kind of vulture pick at it and reuse it. But trying to push the envelope, but what about the tougher stuff like shingles and, you know, like anyone can scrap like the copper and the iron, but what about the tin, which doesn't get a very good price, but there's a lot of it, you know, and artwork is one big, and we've started a wood shop that makes furniture out of reclaimed materials. So I think we'd have to be more creative, but I think it could be really interesting to think about that with you.
Yep. There's an organization out in Oregon that had a whole business around deconstructing mobile homes. So, you know, I've seen it done.
If you could shoot me a link on that, that'd be cool.
Okay.
I've got to run. This has been great, Stacey. Your work is really cool, really big, and also you too, Casey. I know about your work, and so just thanks for what you all do.
Yeah, thanks to you both, and thanks, Stacey. I was actually in Appalachia last week. We're filming a veteran for this documentary film project for our suicide prevention work, and we were in Elizabethton. Does that count as Appalachia? Elizabethton, Tennessee, Johnson City?
Yeah.
Is that
yeah.
Is that I thought it was. So
Yep.
anyway, I've been down
Very
that part.
good.
Good. Oh, Stacey, thank you so much. And like I said, I'm kind of running, I'm kind of in between flights. And so when I think about this, I'm going to reach out and we can chat some more. Okay.
Okay. Well,
And
thank you
Brandon,
all.
thank you so much. Thanks, Brittany.